Welcome everyone to TSSA Talks. We're really excited today. We are here at the historic Exit Inn in Nashville, Tennessee. They are our partners along with us at Tennessee State Soccer Association in this series of interviews, I guess is the best way to describe them, where we're talking to folks. We're really trying to shine a light on communities that have been underrepresented in soccer, both across our state and across our whole country. And even some issues that deal with our entire world. We're happy today to be joined by several members of the Black community. Today, I'm really happy to be joined by a friend and a colleague. Jamonn Brady is one of the leaders of the coaching at Stones River Football Club here in Smyrna, Tennessee. He is a native Tennessean and is also a member of our ODP staff. That's one of the programs I get a chance to work with. My name is Brian Johnson. I'm the Director of Player Development with Tennessee State Soccer Association, and we're really pleased to have Jamonn with us here today at the historic Exit Inn. Jamonn, welcome, man. Thanks for joining us today.
Man, I was really excited when you reached out to me about this. Excited to be here today.
Well, great. Well, as we said sort of in our lead in here, our big goal with this is to try to shine a light on underrepresented communities. And I think from just the little bit of knowledge I have about your background growing up, I think your journey as a Black man in soccer in Tennessee, has shown some times when you were very underrepresented, and perhaps there are some areas where maybe there's a little better representation now, but still some things where we want to work on. So if you could, the way we'd like to start is if you could take us from kind of your story on how you came to soccer and kind of up through your playing career.
Right. So it wasn't really complicated. My dad wanted me in all sports growing up, all except for American football. I was pretty skinny, still not the biggest of guys, so I played soccer, basketball, baseball, all those things as a kid, just to stay active. And my dad was really involved with me in a lot of that stuff. But soccer in particular was one that he wasn't familiar with, actually. And so
where you growing up? Where is this happening?
Yeah, so this is all happening in Oak Ridge, Tennessee.
Gotcha.
So my family's from southern Mississippi, but my parents transplanted to Oak Ridge to work at the plants in Oak Ridge during the Martin Marietta days back in the day. Soccer being something different to them was introduced to me by my best friend, who was a kid that lived across the street. My neighbor was born we were born actually 3 weeks apart. And so naturally we came up as best friends. And I think I was 4 and I was starting kindergarten. And he came to my house and was like, "Hey, I'm playing soccer this season. You should play too." And since he was my best friend, it was like, of course, like, why wouldn't I play? And so, with no reservation, I expressed that to my dad, and my dad signed me up, and on we went, and into soccer I went. Now, obviously at that age, there wasn't any thought about anything other than my friend was playing soccer, and it was something where you ran around and got sweaty and had a good time. So it was just one of the sports. So again, I played soccer and I played basketball and I played baseball, but soccer stuck.
So how long did you continue playing all those sports? Because that's one thing that's an issue in youth sports today, is specialization. How long did you continue playing multiple sports growing up?
So I probably played 3 seasons of baseball. 3 years of baseball or so, and probably 2 years of basketball. And both of those sports were things that I didn't really excel in. I was a fairly decent athlete, but I didn't really excel. And so, and soccer was one of those places where I kind of stood out, not just because I looked different than everybody else, but because I performed pretty well on the field, and I loved hearing everybody cheer. So in the other sports, I wasn't really getting that. So I stuck with the one where more people cheered when I got the ball. So that's kind of how that shook out. I mean, it was kind of a natural, almost like a natural selection thing. I took to it, and it took to me.
It almost kind of chose you as much as you chose it.
Yes, absolutely.
So you mentioned there that not a lot of people look like you. Growing up in Oak Ridge then, so we're talking about the
early 80s.
Early 80s, okay.
Yeah.
So when you played basketball, when you played baseball, when you played soccer, was it drastically different what your teammates, what the spectators, how it looked? How describe that to us.
Yeah, so Oak Ridge in general, I think, as I look back as an adult on my childhood, Oak Ridge was a little different in general just because of the nature of the city. The city was built around 3 largely governmental agencies that paid really highly. And so the environment in which I grew up in was a little different. And because they were governmental agencies, there was a bit of a press to get a mix of diversity in the city, period, within that organization, which encompassed the city. So there was a good bit of diversity as far as people of different cultures. There wasn't a lot of different. There wasn't a lot of any particular sect, but there was a lot of different sects, if that makes sense. And so, in the various sports, basketball, of course, looked a lot like it does now. Baseball, probably I would say there was a little bit larger minority presence in baseball then than what I feel like I see now. I'm not really heavily involved in those communities these days, but just from what I see at the pro level, there was seemed to be a little bit larger presence there then. So in those environments, I fit in a lot more. There wasn't much thought put into my ethnicity or my skin color or anything like that. But definitely, as I grew in soccer and went from playing a recreational soccer league with Oak Ridge, which was neighborhood versus neighborhood, to a club level in soccer where it was our city versus other towns and cities, it quickly became apparent that there weren't a lot of people that looked like me on the field, A, and then from my peers, B. I mean, that travel aspect of soccer came into play for me pretty heavily around middle school. And, middle school friends that were black would ask me why I was playing a white boy sport and why wasn't I out on the football team or the basketball team? You're pretty good at these things and you're a good sports player. Why are you playing that sport instead of this one with all those white boys instead of out here with us, if you will? And kind of from the other side, when we play against other teams, there was name calling and things like that because I was pretty good. So it was a way of trying to slow me down, if you will. So it was around that age that I realized that I was different, for sure. And the sport I was playing here in Tennessee wasn't really something where I was going to get a lot of accolades or glory, if you will, from a social standpoint for playing it.
So you start your soccer journey, you go from playing in the rec leagues in your town, you're now playing at a more competitive level on club teams that are traveling around when you're in middle school. You then go on and play in high school.
Yes.
I know just enough from, us chatting beforehand that, you had some particular experiences coming up in Oak Ridge and all of a sudden being a member of a high school. That's a whole different social interaction for all of this period, whether you play a sport or not, which sport you play. Tell me about your high school experience and how that continued to shape and form your experiences with soccer.
Yeah, so coming out of middle school, the pressure within the black community of friends, not the community, of school, of my peers at school, adults were very supportive, but friends at school can be rough. And so, coming out of middle school, I thought, man, going into high school, I need to, change my reputation and be more with the black people that are popular and things like that. So I thought, maybe it's time to hang up soccer and maybe look at basketball or football or something like that, where those people were getting more attention and questioning why I wasn't being a part of it. And I wasn't extremely popular. So I was asking myself, you could be more popular if you go do these things with this other crowd. And so I actually told my parents that I was going to quit soccer. I'll never forget sitting at the dinner table telling them I was done, going from middle school or from junior high school then to high school. And their response was shockingly minimal. I kind of quietly brought it up and they asked a couple questions and I gave them a couple of really pathetic answers and they said, okay. And so tryouts for high school came. Conditioning started for high school, the first day of conditioning, and I didn't go. I was set in I'm gonna change my reputation, and I'm gonna be the popular guy playing this other sport. And the second day of conditioning, one of the seniors from the team the previous year found me in the hall and asked me why I didn't come to conditioning. And so all of a sudden, I'm like, man, I don't know this guy. He knows who I am, and he's a senior, so maybe I could be popular playing soccer. And so I did. I went out the next day for conditioning. As far as playing for high school, that was kind of all she wrote as far as being on the team. the team was very, very connected, very inclusive. Loved every moment with the team, with the players, with the guys, and really, really respected my coach. My coaching up until then was more of a my club coach was more of a let's go
A motivator, as opposed to a tactical.
As opposed to a tactical guy. He was more or less give the ball to Jamonn up front, let him go score some goals. Let's go team, yes, and was really good at getting us all excited about going out to play. But the high school coach was extremely tactical, and I had never really experienced that. So I struggled a bit early on in dealing with that and trying to learn the game.
So I'm guessing you could have said junior high. So was it 10th grade your first time going to high school? So all of a sudden it's 10th grade. We've all been there.
Yes.
Be a lot of things going on. So all of a sudden you're 10th grade.
Yes.
You're at the high school. You're on the soccer team.
Yes.
First time with a different level of coaching.
Yes.
And it's a transition.
Yes.
And so how did that process end up working itself out?
Yeah. So the transition was tough. My first year I struggled a good bit. Second year kind of found my footing, and then by my senior year was really confident in myself and my ability. And going into my senior year, I was 5 seniors. And one of them was the leading goal scorer of the team the year before, looking to be the leading goal scorer again the next year. And another guy was a player that transitioned each year from between basketball and soccer. So his basketball season hadn't quite ended before our soccer season was getting underway. But we do conditioning and have tryouts, and coach every year did a player selected captain and a coach selected captain. So we had 2 captains every year, and they had bands and represented the team. And so going into my senior year, I'm thinking these 2 guys are kind of the team favorites and the school more popular kids at school. These 2 guys most likely will get voted captain, one or the other. The team will vote one, coach will pick the other. Thought nothing of it. But for, I guess, a lot of the players saw it otherwise and voted me captain as the player's captain, which was a shock to me, a complete surprise to me. I was very proud of that nomination and accepted it with great joy and pride. But that's not how the coach necessarily wanted it to play out. And so he was left with having to choose between kind of his 2 favorite players as the coach's captain. And he never made that selection. So I ended up kind of being the only captain by myself, and was never really acknowledged as and treated as the captains I had seen before me. And not that I craved or desired any type of special or preferential treatment. I just saw what had happened before, and now here it was my time, and I had been selected, and I didn't feel the same vibe. And so that continued on until the first game where I never really got a captain's band. And so I decided that, you know what, I'm gonna make my own. So I started to wear mismatched socks. So if anybody knows me out there and has seen me coach and all those things, you see that I wear mismatched socks. That started way back in '96.
So your senior year of high school,
'97.
You've been picked as the captain, not really acknowledged, and so for your way to sort of differentiate yourself, so the referee could tell, hey, you're the guy that he wants to talk to. You go out and you guys are red and white at Oak Ridge?
Yeah.
So you go out with 1 red and 1 white sock.
Yeah. So, and again, it wasn't something where I was necessarily trying to be rebellious at all. In fact, when I first did it, I thought he would make me change it, and he didn't. And so I just kind of rolled with it, and it was just kind of my thing that year. If you go back and look at any of those VHS tapes from those games, you'll see the one skinny black kid running around with red and with mismatched socks on. I've watched a couple of them in the past decade, and it's pretty comical. But that's where that started. It was just my way of letting myself know, regardless of who acknowledges you as what you are. And my teammates never treated me any different. I mean, they voted me captain and they treated me as a captain, which was all I needed. But that was that little bit of extra for myself on the field to kind of show that.
Sure. So you've got the situation. So this coach, you said, I mean, right away, your first reactions as you're talking about your high school coach were positive.
Yeah.
That he was able to teach you some things.
Yes.
And that he was teaching concepts you hadn't been made familiar
Never.
with. So
Yeah.
I don't feel like you're trying to say this coach wasn't a positive influence.
No, not at all.
But by the same token, you now have to sort of make sense of as an adolescent,
Yes.
becoming a man, all
Yes.
that comes with being a
Yes.
17 or 18-year-old boy.
Yes.
making sense of, making peace with that? How did you do it at the time? How do you look back at that?
Okay, so yeah, so it's tough because at the time, I never thought anything of it. Like at the time, I was so naive, and some of this I guess credit to my parents and how they raised me, and not to think anything different other than work and put your head down and keep going. So at the time, I didn't really think much of it. I mean, I just thought he wanted these guys, and that's not what happened. So here's the result. He has some little bit of animus towards you, or he doesn't really know how to handle this situation or whatever. So, just keep it moving. And I did. But as I got older and looked back, and other experiences in life started to show me more or less that adults aren't much different than kids in their thought process in a lot of ways, that there was something there more than just he preferred this guy over you. Like there was more there. He struggled to communicate with me in general. And again, as I look back, I don't really have any animosity towards him for that. I just, I don't know, I guess kind of wish he would have tried a little bit harder. Because he did make a couple attempts to try to form a relationship, if you will. Sure. But again, as I look back, I think the only relationship he was trying to form was I need more out of you relationship instead of
more transactional as opposed to a real deeper relationship.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think as I hear you say that, as a coach, we're coaches, we're colleagues now. I know a lot of the things I tried to do as a coach are things I either learned because I really enjoyed what I experienced as a player, or there's some things I really try to avoid because I didn't. I'm sure that shaped your coaching. We're going to take a little break now. When we come back, Jamonn, if you could help us, I'd like to go from you're one of the heights of being named the captain of my high school team is one of my most treasured accomplishments. So now one of the highest heights of your playing career. As we come back, we want to talk about how you transition from being a player to how you transition into now your current role where you're a professional, you're a soccer coach, that's your job, and how that transition happened. That's what we'll do when we come back to TSSA Talks.